Another round of the Danish Esport Racing Championship is upon us. We head to Circuit Barcelona, Catalonia to have a little bit of Ferrari action here. I'm Connery Maddock. I'm joined by Justin Prince as ever. We had an absolutely bombastic race at Imola last time out. We have to hope for the same here when we head to Catalonia. And Justin, I don't think anything can top off what happened in that first race, but we can certainly give it a good try, or rather the previous race.
Yeah, absolute madness in terms of the fights for the race lead in both the rounds, essentially. Battles for positions that led to eventual contact in some cases. There were some absolute throwers, to say the very least, last round. But this week brings very different challenges, Connery, because this is a brand new track for many of these drivers. One of the newest road courses on the entire iRacing service, which means there's not a lot of experience for some of these drivers to get used to the track, especially with the series.
And that's the big thing about this series, Justin, is that the drivers do not know what's on the cards when it comes to tracks round on round on round. And it certainly adds an interesting element to the racing here, with a couple of drivers not really playing very, very nicely with the circuit and not having that time to try and get up to speed as far as the rest of the competition are concerned. Here's the structure of how today will play out, of course, unchanged from the first couple of rounds of the season. You can see that we're currently in a little bit of a practice session. We will be for a couple of minutes more, and then we'll head on to our first qualifying session of the evening to set the grid for race number 1. Then we'll have a little bit of a break, practice 2, and then qualifying number 2 will start to set the grid for race number 2. Both 25-minute races, but as we've seen throughout this season, Justin, you can get a lot of action in 25 minutes.
Absolutely, and with a track such as this, there's the chance we see some potential action. Yes, it's a track that is very much a rhythm circuit in terms of road courses, but today we'll challenge the drivers' patience as well as their ability to deal with the technical parts of the racetrack to set themselves up for the front stretch and put themselves in the best situation to get one of the 2 victories in those 25-minute races today.
Yep, of course. And, well, when you talk about drivers that have made a big impact in this in this series so far, well, the main name you got to think about is that man, Lasse Bak. He's out there practicing, trying to get up to speed in terms of how the circuit goes for that RS competition team. Race winner last time out, that was race number 2. We had Marcus Jensen win race number 1 at Imola, but Lasse Bak, he's been so brilliant so far this season that he's basically been untouchable once he gets to the very front of the field.
Yeah, he's got a win in every single round so far, and 1 round sweep in the first half of the season. It's just been that type of domination, to say the very least, from him. There's a reason why he's already got more than a 300-point advantage coming into today over Martin Christensen. It's about the consistency. It's been tough to battle with that said consistency as he continues to try and get that second to last corner down before we begin qualifying.
Yep, and well, we will be getting a couple of cars still getting themselves a couple of laps of practice. You see Lucas Dalgaard out there for VG Esports Racing there. As you can see, the current standings on the left-hand side of your screen, you can see that good advantage that Lasse Bak has over Mikael Gard. And Gard had an absolutely nightmarish round at Imola, getting disqualified for going over the instant limit not once but twice. So both races, he had to finish right at the back of the field. He has to be hoping for a good result here to get his season back on track.
Absolutely. It was a dismal round, to say the very least. At this point, you're hoping to have a consistent race today. This is a type of track where it might be important, absolutely, to try and have that amount of consistency today and make sure you don't make mistakes so you are in contention for victory. So, see if there's a bounce back today for Mikael Gard.
the interesting thing as well for Mikael Gard, I'm not actually seeing him in the roster right now as far as the drivers that are currently practicing. So if he does want to get in here, then he's going to have to get a move on, because we've only got around about 4 minutes of practice left before qualifying starts. So maybe a little bit worrying there for Mikael Gard, going to drop more points here in this situation. And if he does, and well, Martin Christiansen there is very close to overtaking him when it comes to that second place in the point standings.
Mikael Gard was in the top 11 in pre-qualification, so that's definitely something that's going to be big. The driver who is 31st, and Matthias Christiansen in the 074, does move up into the top split for this first race, so that's crucial. But Christiansen already looking pretty consistent. He was the second fastest in pre-qualification, and as we've seen, he can definitely battle for the race victories round in and round out.
Yeah, absolutely. You do bring up a fantastic point, because there's not only this split going on right now, there are multiple splits of this Danish Esports Racing Championship. Of course, the lower down splits, you're not going to gain as many points as you do in this sort of premier top split, but if Mikael Gard hasn't been able to get himself into the top split, then that is not the greatest of performances, because I would have thought at least he'd be fast enough to start maybe at the bottom of the grid here today, if he's not really feeling too up to it. So that's going to be an interesting one to keep track of. Hopefully we can get some news on that relatively soon. But we've got 3 minutes left here of practice. It is currently Martin Christiansen that leads the timing sheets right now. We can get that up on screen for you. He leads by about 3.5 tenths of a second over Magnus Vasterson right now. But meanwhile, I'm still not seeing a lap time being set here by Lasse Bak. He's pulled up short of the start-finish line pretty much every single lap he's done. So is this him holding his cards close to his chest?
I think it's more so just trying to make sure he doesn't make a mistake out of turn 14 and 15, because that is a very tight complex through RACC to get through that part of the racetrack. Every single time he's ended up hitting a set of turtles, a yellow rumble strip, just like the one we just seen right there, every corner exit in that part. And I think he's just trying to get his marks down to where he doesn't touch that curb and in turn potentially damage the front end or get an incident point or lose speed. He's just struggled to get through that part of the racetrack so far. This time by, he ends up losing the back end.
Ooh, that's not exactly ideal. So, yeah, Lasse Bak yet to get a clean lap in, which is a bit concerning. And with the lap times how they're turning out right now, even if he gets to the end of this outlap, he won't have enough time to be able to complete an actual flying lap here. So Lasse Bak not going to set a lap time here in practice, which is very, very odd to see. Hopefully his luck changes when it comes to that qualifying session, but he's struggling a little bit right now, and actually just completely stops that car coming up towards that first sector, so he's not going to get any sort of time in. And do you think that's going to affect him a lot coming into the qualifying session here, that he hasn't been able to get at least that sort of preliminary practice qualifying lap, and now he's just going to do it cold turkey?
A little bit. It's not end-all be-all, but at the very least he's gone through most of the track to get used to that at least 6 or 7 times to try and prepare for today's qualifications. So it's not end-all be-all in my opinion. It's just not as much in terms of an overall time set so far to compare yourselves to, but we're already seeing this with many of the drivers. Those curves are going to be hurting a lot of drivers. They're already, some of them, pulling off to the side if they hit that yellow turtle at this point, and that can definitely be a factor as this race progresses in the second to last corner.
Yeah, we'll just have to see, especially when drivers start to get aggressive with each other and trying to find the lap time every which way. Big factor here in qualifying as well. Kasper Stoltz out there for Team Singularity at the moment, but the session will end and we'll get ourselves the first qualifying session underway in just a couple of moments' time. And, well, this is going to be pretty big, especially considering Lasse Bak He needs to, like I said, basically do this cold turkey at this point. Hasn't been able to get as much practice in as he perhaps would have wanted. But now, pit lane open, qualifying session underway. 10 minutes to try and set the grid for race 1, Justin.
The thing with Lasse back, this is the interesting part to note is he had the fastest average pre-qualification time by about nearly 0.2 of a second over Martin Christensen to prepare for today's race to make sure you're in top split for this round. So it's interesting to see, maybe again the track conditions can change between those types of situations, and with it being essentially a fixed setup, you have to be able to adjust essentially to the racetrack. The track might be not to his liking maybe in terms of how he wants it to feel.
Yeah, that's the thing. So certainly some storylines already coming into this first qualifying session. Can't wait to see how this one turns out. Drivers currently on their outlaps right now. Of course, these Ferrari still on the old tyre model, so you do not want to push them too much when it comes to the outlap here. They can overheat pretty quickly, so to get the best lap time out of them, you want to keep them relatively cool on the outlap here, which is why you see drivers going relatively slowly as they wind up for their first lap here. And it's going to be very, very difficult here, this first lap. Of course, like I said, there's going to be drivers that are not very well practiced at this circuit at all. So to be thrown into a qualifying session like this relatively quickly, that's going to be a very, very tough one to deal with. There is your championship leader right now, having a couple of problems, of course, coming through that practice session. And he's winding up for his particular lap in just a couple of moments' time here. And do you think there's going to be really any big changes when it comes to a starting grid for this particular race based on the practice times? Or are you just content to have it as we've basically had it before with the likes of Lasse back and Christiansen right at the very front?
I would keep an eye on Vassison as well today, actually, because he looked good in practice and was also looking really good in pre-qualification in terms of timing. So he's got the track fairly well figured out for today's event. Keep an eye on him, I think, as well for today's action.
We're riding on board with him. He's on his first flying lap here, coming through that first sector. It's always a joy to drive here. It's very, very downforce dependent, and you're on the limit of grip all the way through here. Even in these GT cars, in the open wheel cars, it's particularly fun as well. That section, a little bit of snap-on entry to the right there, is able to correct it, so not going to be losing too much time there is Magnus Vasterson. And now coming down the hill, it's corner particularly tricky, especially that exit there as you come on this little short run up towards the S's. Been a pretty clean lap so far from Vasterson. Just that one slight error coming through the first sector, but everything else has been relatively neat and tidy. Through the right-hand kink then in the very middle of the lap, and careful not to drag out too much coming through there. So easy to pick up an off-track by pushing it just a little bit too wide there. Now slam onto the Angus for the slowest corner of the circuit, and Vasterson does that really perfectly. A little bit of a slide on exit, but that hasn't really hurt him here, as now he's going to come up towards that final sector of the lap, and so of course that very tricky sort of final chicane as well. We're not using the classic layout here where you just take that very, very fast second to last and then final corner. You have to get it slowed all the way down for the final chicane. That's a neat and tidy through there. That's basically summed up this lap here. Now we can go 100% throttle all the way to the start-finish line. What's the opening lap time going to be for Magnus Vasterson? A 1:45.065. That's good enough, of course, provisionally pole position at the moment. We can pull up the rest of them. And he's actually, well, was 1.5 of a second clear, but Martin Christiansen beats him to the punch by half a second, well over half a second.
Yeah, Christensen is definitely flying on the racetrack right now. This is, as mentioned, a bit of a rhythm track. We've seen it in Formula 1 especially. It's the official test track for that, and backstopped on the racetrack.
Interesting. What's the plan here? Is he just going to sit there and wait for his tires to cool off a little bit? I have to wonder. As I see Joachimsen going up into P number 2 right now. We'll keep you updated on what's going on with Lasse back there as we look at a couple of the other drivers. You see Stefan Overgaard. He's coming out the final corner to set his lap here. 1:45.440 there. good enough to put him up into P number 12 to start race number 1 here today. And having a look down through the field, that's basically everyone with the exception, or the main exception, of Lasse Bak that hasn't set a qualifying time here. We also have Marcus Jensen, although just as I say that, Marcus Jensen, he just stamps his authority here on qualifying. Had a fantastic race number 1 at Imola, and looks to continue that sort of form here into qualifying 1 and race 1 of Catalonia.
Yeah, some blistering speed once again for him so far. The track is cooling down a little bit. It is a bit shady in some portions of the circuit. Lasse Bak waited until it dropped 1 degree Fahrenheit down to 111 again before he hit the gas once more to get himself going for his first lap.
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting one. Racing drivers, am I right? They're looking for every single small advantage that they can possibly get. And if it means just waiting in the final sector for that track temperature to drop 1 degree, they're going to take it. As the RS competition car now very much on its flying lap here through the S's section. And we've only seen part of the lap so far, so can't really have any further comment on this as it goes right now, but it's Lasse Bak. We expect a mega performance from him, but that final sector has been particularly tricky for him coming up into this session. Let's see how well he is able to deal with it. Through that slow left-hand hairpin, almost tracks out a little bit too wide coming on the exit of the corner there, but hasn't picked up an incident point as far as I can see, so he's able to continue on here, coming up towards that final sector now, and around about 1 minute 30 in terms of lap time here. It's a 1 minute and 44.2 to beat. Can Lasse Bak do it? He's heading his way through the final corner right now, and he's going to be very close to being able to do it. Start-finish line is very, very imminent, and he is just able to beat it. My word, that's a close margin right at the very front of the field. 26 thousandths of a second separate Bak and Jensen for provisional pole in qualifying 1.
He timed that up just about perfectly to get him his lap in, wait for the right conditions, and now has got himself up to the top of the board. I think he's going to be very happy with that because, as we've seen in every single round so far, track position, very crucial. Should note that the time between pre-qualification and the first race for today, 4 seconds difference. That's how much of a weather difference is between pre-qualification and today's round.
Yeah, that weather really, really does affect things here. And it's just exemplified in the lap times that you see right now. You see Bak and Jensen, basically the 2 runaway cars right at the very front of qualifying here. They have a considerable margin over pretty much the rest of the field. Christiansen's in a little bit of no man land as far as P number 3 is concerned. We can see Nestor head his way across the line right now. That's a 2 minutes 20, so that's not exactly a representative lap time from the 0.24 car, as he heads his way down in towards turn number 1. But these qualifying standings right now won't change all that much because it is the first of the flying laps here, which is the fastest that your drivers have to deal with. So this is basically set now unless we get a massive surprise here in the final minute and a half.
And just about everyone has recorded 2 lap times. And we see a huge disparity, though, in terms of the best lap times across the entire top 12. And I think that's going to mean, essentially, it's going to be one of those types of races where some drivers are definitely used to the rhythm of the circuit, others not so much. So it's going to absolutely, I think, be an interesting challenge for some of the drivers here to be able to get things down, especially once we get to sector number 3 on this racetrack, as we've already discussed a couple times. Wouldn't be surprised to see some drivers really battle to try and get a rhythm together in sector 1 as well today.
Yeah, and that's an important part of the circuit, to try and get a rhythm going as well, because if you make a slight error, it's very similar to the opening sector of Suzuka. If you make a slight error, deviate from your line just a little bit, you're going to be losing so much time, as that messes up your flow into the next corner and into the next corner and into the next corner, and things just pile up on top of each other. So important to be clean and consistent through that first sector. But See Nestor Arch head his way through the final sector right now. Currently P number 15 in terms of qualifying here, as he's just going to get himself across the line with 5 seconds remaining here in the session. Not going to be able to improve, of course, on his lap time, but that is going to be it for qualifying number 1, and this is how the starting grid turns out for race number 1. It looks a little bit like this. Lasse back, pole position for RS competition once again, but it's Marcus Jensen that's not too far away for Team Redline. He also starts on that front row. Martin Christiansen pretty close in the championship as well. He starts P3. Andreas Joachimsen starts in P number 4 here today. Dali Jankovic starts 5th with Mikael Sondergaard 6th. Thomas Hirsen and Matthias Woodsko will bring things down to P number 8 on the starting grid. Matthias Jensen, Frederick Jorgensen, Magnus Vassersen, and Kasper Henningsen rounds out your top 12 on the grid, and Justin, you have the rest.
Bertelsen and Oyster start in 13th and 14th position on the racetrack. Sturwich in 15th position. He'll start alongside Nick Madsen. Stefan Overgaard deep in the field today in 17th position with a 1:45.331 alongside Chris Borg. Chris Jensen, the 31st best driver in pre-qualification, starts in 19th overall today, alongside Johnny Nielsen, who's in P number 20. Jacob Pedersen is in 21st, with Kasper Soltze in 22nd spot, with Thomas Wick and Lucas Dogard in 23rd and 24th. Lorch, Golick, Eriksson, Boingtoff, Danielson, and Luiskov round things off.
They didn't give you a lot of time to finish that. We're off for the way for the race 1 here at Circuit Barcelona, Catalonia in the Danish Esport Racing Championship. Lasse Bak has gone the way well from the front of the field. It looks like it's going to be a 3-wide action, though, into turn 1 for P number 2. It's Marcus Jensen that currently leads that particular battle through the first sector, and Christiansen's going to fight him all the way, and we can ride on board with him as they go side by side coming through this first sector now, and Jensen almost gets shoved off the racing circuit as they head their way down and towards the right-hander. Fantastic battling here early on for the second step of the podium, and Marcus Jensen just has to back out a little bit in that situation, but look at the gap, Justin, that's given Lasse Bak already at the very front of the field. He's up to 1.1 seconds without having to do much of anything.
You know, we have a couple drivers off in the grass in turn number 5, but rest of the field has gone in through cleanly. Yes, absolutely, that side-by-side battling and side drafting really held up second and third position. The rest of the grouping, 1.2 seconds already now the advantage. That's how much time they lost by running side-by-side out of 1 and 2.
Yeah, and you can see, there we go, there's the driver riding on the back of him. He's leaving pretty much everyone in his dust at the moment. You can see the train stacked up directly behind that RS competition car. It's basically the ideal start here for Lasse Bak in this situation, but it's also been a pretty good start for Martin Christiansen as he's able to haul himself up into P2 after that extended side-by-side battle with that Team Redline car, and he can continue on his way, coming towards complete lap number 1 here. 23 minutes left remaining. Lasse Bak leads by 1.3 seconds already in this thing. We see a move happening a little bit further back. This is Joachimsen versus Dali Jankovic down in towards turn number 1 here for the second time in the race. Joachimsen sends it in, and Joachimsen gains the position, so he gets promoted into P4.
That's going to be one of the prime, if not the best passing zone on this racetrack today. If you can get the slipstream, get side by side down the front stretch, and then take away the inside line into turn 1 and 2, you're able to try and get that pass done. It's the matter, though, of completing it by the exit or 2, or else we see the same example what we've seen at the start of the race. We've also seen a couple drivers try and dive it up the inside of turn 5 into the harder braking zone in this portion of the racetrack to try and get a move done, but that is also a risky one.
Yeah, very risky indeed. 0.4 of a second between P4 and 5 at this moment in time. The gap towards the ahead of Joachimsen here, that's looking a little bit worse for him. 8.5 tenths of a second to that Team Redline car of Marcus Jensen. So Joachimsen has to keep himself in contention here. It helps that he can sort of stick within the draft here, but it's not really that much of a drafting circuit here. Is Circuit Barcelona Catalonia. I see a driver dropping down the field a little bit. That is actually Matthias Woodsko, as he's made a little bit of an error coming through the final sector of this lap. We'll get to see it on the replay here. What has that happened here to Woodsko, so that he's lost a couple of positions, and we'll get to see it. Oh, that's a big slide through that little left-hand kink, and all of a sudden, as very quickly, 2 positions lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Just lost the grip there in terms of that section after hitting the curbing just a little bit too much, and these cars can get pretty sensitive. In terms of that curbing, it just ended up pushing him around just that little bit, losing that one spot. But already, some packs are starting to form up here. 4th on back now, getting separated from the rest of the podium.
Yep, they are. It's about a 1.5 second difference between Jensen and Joachimsen at the moment, but Joachimsen and Jankovic still very much close. Joachimsen, of course, getting past Jankovic on that previous lap, but Jankovic still showing that he has a little bit of pace here, actually taking that left hand a little bit tidier than what Joachimsen was able to manage, as that orange Ronin Simsport car had to push wide on the exit of the corner and kicks up a little bit of the dust. And again, quite untidy for Joachimsen coming through the S's section as well. So all of these errors starting to pile up is keeping Jankovic in this, even though he might not have the faster clear air pace.
Yeah, but again, as we've seen in real life too, it's going to take a daring move, a bit of a daring move just behind them. Sondergaard just made the dive for P6.
Yeah, we'll have to get a little bit of a look. There's the pass having been made. We'll get a replay up on screen.
Yeah, you'll see this right here. Sondergaard seen an opportunity. This is in the run up to turn number 10 specifically, where he's seen the opening to the inside, tried to jump through the opening by being later on the brakes right here. The thing is, though, it's hard to make it stick because it then reverts back to the side-by-side. You can get the run on the outside, and he elects to check up even to try and get to that short chute of 11, because it then turns back to the preferred line of the right side of the track for turn 12.
Absolutely. So yet another lap complete. We're on the 4th lap here, and Sondergaard actually still very aggressive of Hiresen as he tries to get the drive around the outside, coming through the wide right-hander, but not able to in this situation. You can see the flashing of the lights from the cars behind. That's actually Matthias Jensen that's letting him know letting him know that he's there. Of course, the universal driver signal of maybe not please get out of the way, but certainly just trying to scare the driver ahead of him, I suppose, as they work their way through the end of the first sector into that second sector. And you can see a bit of a train of cars still here for P number 5 and back. So you got P number 6, P number 5 and back, excuse me. So you got Jankovic, you got Hirsen, you got Sondergaard, you got Matthias Jensen, Kasper Henningsen. You also have Magnus Vassersen as well on the outside looking in. It very much seems, look at the dive though, down the inside. Sondergaard on Hirsen through the left-hand hairpin, and that's the position picked up by Sondergaard.
He tried it again, but once more, this time a bit more of an aggressive squeeze, just on the car behind. But you can see it right here again. He had the opening, knew he could outbrake him. This time, he gets it done right. Squeeze him off the racing line, boom, gets the position. And they were squeezing themselves off the racing line just behind that as well, and all of that.
Yeah, so a little bit of battling here just inside the top 10. So P6, 7, 8, 9, 10 also involved, but look at that, it's pretty much also the entire field might as well be involved at this point, as you see that massive drain coming down the pit straight there into turn number 1. So a lot of drivers still very close together at this stage of the race. It's more been the sort of those breakaway drivers right at the front of the field that have been able to get away, and it's a similar story to what we had in qualifying with those outliers right at the very front. Everyone else though still very close and very competitive. Yeah,
absolutely right now, and I'm curious to see again who can continue to try and charge up for the field. We already have some drivers who've gone +6 like Dolgard and Solzit, and already We have Henningsen up +3 positions, for example. So drivers are making passes. It's just going to take a couple laps to set things up to the field with this type of racetrack so you can get the job done right and in an efficient manner without losing too much time.
Yeah, but you can see it on the left-hand side. You see Christensen up 1 position to get himself up into P2, but you can see Henningsen up 3, like you mentioned. Madsen up 3, Stolzer up 6. He's one of the biggest movers, tied biggest mover, 3-way tie for that. Dalgard also up 6, and Lilienskov in P24, he's also up 6 positions so far this race. Bertelsen, though, he's had a bit of a terrible start in that 067 car. He's lost 6 positions here at the very, very start of this race, but still a little bit of time to try and recover things. We just had P number 9, a little bit of a swap for position there, as Marcus Vasterson, he's able to get himself a little bit further inside that top 10.
Vasterson just about a 10th off per lap on the race leader, so he's got himself a good pace in just the same type of situation. Turn 10, late brake, take the inside away, force the driver to have to get up off the gas on the top side. You can get the job done. That's what Vasterson did that time. Made him lift and try and concede the position and to go with the smarter racecraft move rather than the over-aggressive move, so to speak.
Yeah, that's one of the big overtaking opportunities here at this racetrack, because it is the biggest braking zone. Some people would have thought it's a pretty braking zone into turn 1, but it's not the tightest of corners. And it's not really a massive overtaking opportunity because it's because of that. And of course, it being an S's section, very difficult to try and work your way past there. But in the middle of the lap where you have that left-hand hairpin, that's going to be prime pickings in terms of trying to get your overtakes done. We've seen a couple of passes done down into there already. We did actually have a black flag early on for the 018 car, and that is Anton Gulish, who has served this penalty. He's dead last right now, though, 30th.
Yeah, that's lost him a ton of time. 45 seconds or so behind the overall race lead and 6 seconds away to the next position. It's going to take a while until we see some cars, but if he can get his head focused up, he might be able to catch on to somebody to fight for position. Speaking of fighting a little bit, second is starting to heat up a little bit for the time being, but the times are shuffling about a little bit as you see in the last two.
Yeah, Marcus Jensen was a brilliant qualifying performance to get so close, but yet so far when it comes to your race leader right now. But did drop that position at the very start of the race. Christensen able to wrestle his way by. And now he has about half a second advantage over that simperformance.com car. And is actually marginally extending the gap as well. We'll have a look at the 034 car. That's Jacob Pedersen. What's going on with him, Justin?
Well, essentially in the run-up to turn 13, he kind of helped a car go around this past time by, where you can see that car spinning around. Helped him a little bit where he had a bit of a faster run heading into turn 13. You'll keep an eye on this right here because you'll see they're already into a 4-car train just about up on your screen, but there can be some differences to start of the complex. He had a harder run to the entrance. Yeah,
that's an error that is basically all Pedersen's fault there. You can't really see it any other way as he sends a car spinning. That is possibly one of the clearest penalties that I have ever seen. So I wouldn't be entirely surprised if we see a black flag come out here.
Yeah, that might be the case indeed here. It still has to go under review, mind you, so that's something to definitely keep an eye on. And again, that was around the 20s at the moment. By the way, P7 starting to heat up because Jensen is turning up the pressure.
Oh, you see how hard he went over that first curb there, and meanwhile, Vasterson behind having a bunch of problems through that final sector. He talked about, Justin, how, those curbs through those final couple of corners, how vicious they can be, and I think we've just gotten a good demonstration of that with Matthias Jensen taking the first one heavy, and Vasterson right behind this, taking the second one not ideally, and pushing wide, so a couple of drivers struggling.
I think Vasterson actually added a little bit of damage to his front end. That's how aggressive he would over that curbing, but that's the risk you have if you go over top that yellow curbing at this point of the racetrack. it can end up causing potential damage and losing you a ton of time, or potentially be the end-all be-all portion of your race.
Not spotting any damage to that 64 car, but it's hard to see with the plain black livery that it has.
Yeah, you'll see it just a very touch bit pushing up the left front, but it's very minor. It's not overly aggressive type of damage to deal with, but it is some to deal with.
Yeah, it is, and sometimes, something like that maybe can affect your lap time a tenth or two, and that could make all the difference when in terms of gaining a position or holding on to a position. So Weston has to be maybe a little bit careful coming towards the final 11 minutes of this race. And it's been pretty calm. Apart from those incidents towards the back of the field, we haven't seen that much car-to-car contact, although I'm well aware of the curse of the commentator being a thing here. As you see, Sondergaard and Jankovic still very close. Sondergaard marginally losing on that last lap, but has been making good inroads previously. And as he looks to try and re-establish himself inside the top 5, but he goes very wide through the final corner. And I've seen a couple of drivers do that, just leaving tire tracks there in the gravel. Doesn't punish you too much, though, except for maybe just getting that 1x.
Yeah, and just about every single driver has gotten at least one. That's how hard some of these cars have been pushing across this track. Especially in Sector 2, they've been picking them up. So it is a track where there's a lot of pavement, yes, but there's still the chance of getting potential incident points. Remember, the max you can get in a race 17, and that definitely popped up in the last round a few times.
With the same driver as well. Look at this, though. Battle for P number 2. Starting to just get that little bit closer. Because look at that, all green in the bottom right-hand corner for Marcus Jensen. So he's really turned up the wick. 0.3 of a second gained, lap 6, 1/10, lap 7, 1/10, lap 8, just edging his way in. And Christiansen, he might have to do a little bit of defending here to try and finish off this race.
Might have to deal with a little bit of aerodynamics to deal with, and a little bit of ascend that time from Jensen. But I think at this point, again, it's just a matter of pressurizing for a mistake and having the most consistent laps. Because, again, with this track, it can take a couple laps to get yourself to the perfect position. I think Sector 3 has been a good sector, to say the least.
Yeah, look at Marcus Jensen. He's just dragging that red line Ferrari, basically pressing its nose up against the back of Christiansen through that final sector. But the thing is, Jensen, he did get a pretty, Christiansen, excuse me, did get a pretty good run off of the final turn. So I think it'll be a safer move into turn number 1 here. But it seems like Jensen, after that sort of poor start that he had, and just sitting behind his opponent coming through the middle portion of this race, maybe he saved a little bit of tire life here and is able to go chasing in the final couple of laps of this race. Looks like we'll have around about 5-6 laps to go here, with around about 8.5 minutes remaining. So still a lot of time here for Jensen to try and get this one done. It's just that he can do nothing about that car just slightly further down the road, about 3 seconds at this point.
Yeah, Lasse Back has just ran away from these drivers, and the more they fight, the more that lead is going to grow. It's just been Lasse Back's domination once again up the front to get away from these two. Just been that type of a season for Lasse.
Yeah, it's been a great one so far. There's really no understatement about it. We are coming towards the second half of the season now, so you would have thought a couple of drivers further down the field will maybe have a little bit of a resurgence, but for Lasse Back, he hasn't really stepped off the noisy pedal as far as this championship is concerned. We see this battle for P5 also still raging on here. Sondergaard versus Jankovic, and Jankovic, I think he's lost the position here. Sondergaard is through.
Yeah, Sondergaard again used the trademark late break into turn 10, get to the bottom side move to get the pass done. But that's just been the best way to pass all day. You talked about it a little bit earlier on. Sondergaard's just the textbook example of, if you've got speed and you time up the pass right, you can make the move and force the driver above to have to lift and give up the position.
That's a textbook pass there. into the left-hand hairpin. Nicely done for Sondergaard. He's now up into P number 5 and looks to try and break away. So getting a little bit of revenge as far as the battle with Jankovic is concerned, because Jankovic was able to get past him in the opening couple of laps, but now Sondergaard, he is back through and looks to try and get a top 5 finish here. Good points haul for him, that's for certain. But we still got this unanswered question for P2. We also see a pretty close battle for P8 as well, because that's Matthias Jensen and Magnus Vastersen. They're currently having a little bit of a duel, and there are more cars down the road potentially that might also be involved in this battle as well, because you got Thomas Hirsen in P7, not too far away, not too far ahead of these guys. Magnus Vastersen though closed in about 0.2 of a second up to Jensen on that previous lap, so he's got the afterburners on at the moment, and we saw how much he was pushing a couple of moments ago through that final sector to gain lap time. Hopefully he's a little bit tidier this time around, and he'll have a chance at trying to gain at least one position here before this race is done.
Yeah, I think he's in a good position at this point. It's just a matter, though, of trying to get to the back end of Jensen and then getting in the right position to make the move. It feels like we've discussed that a couple different times today, but it's just the nature of the racetrack where you have to be patient. If you're over-aggressive, you risk potential trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, Vastersen, again, having a couple of problems. We might see the move ahead, though, because Matthias Jensen, looks to go down the inside. Look at the defense, though, from Hirsen. He pushes him all the way to the grass, 4 tires in the dirt, and that was always going to happen between the two of them. A massive accident in towards turn number 1. Hirsen heavy impact with the barriers, and that was a massively heavy defense that was unjustified as far as I'm concerned, Justin.
Yeah, that is exactly the opposite of smart move. That is brain fade move. They already had contact, mind you, coming off of turn 15, just a little bit of a tap. But this is over defensive. Already, there's 2-3 lanes to the right side. He had to run the driver behind. This is what I talked about at the start of the broadcast. That's just an over aggressive squeeze, and he's got to come back on the racetrack. You can't just let the car of the driver next to you just stay in the grass.
Yeah, absolutely. That is not the best move that Hirsen has pulled off. That's for certain. We'll get to see it again. Looking back, you see that Ferrari just get closer and closer and closer. Looks to make the move. Very heavy defense, but you can't go pushing drivers off the circuit.
No, there's the saying, pushing drivers off the racing line, and then there's that. That's the over-assessive portion, and in terms of what can happen when things go wrong. And we just had a few more drivers just get involved in an incident in live action. The 061 just collided with Soltze after he went around in the middle of the pack.
Let's have a look. I think this might be it. We'll get to see it on the onboard in towards that final sector. As you can see, 2 cars going side by side ahead of him. How does Dalgard react to this? Oh, the rejoin. Oh, that's a terrible, terrible rejoin. I think that was Stolzer, right? You didn't mention his name. That's not an ideal rejoin. So I think the steward's office is going to be pretty busy here at the end of race 1.
Yeah, that was contact with the 4 car that ended up spinning him around where he tried to give the squeeze heading into turn number 12. And not the best place to try and give the squeeze, ends up causing that spin around. So this has been an interesting scenario.
There's a Ronin Simsport car that's slow. That is actually not Ronin Simsport, excuse me. That's Matthias Jensen. That's relatively slow here, which is going to be a big concern for him. He's in P number 8 at the moment. P number 18, excuse me, at the moment. A little bit of a battle ahead of him, though, with Martin Bertelsen versus Stoltz. Stoltz is carrying a little bit of damage, so he's not really going to be all that effective in fighting this, but he will still come back off the top of the S's section, down the inside for the right-hand king. It's so tough to go too wide through here and still carry all the speed. You also have Thomas Vick to get himself involved, a bit of door barging off the corner between the two of them as they hit the anchors into the hairpin now, and this is squeeze a little bit towards the inside, but racing room's given as they're still going to go door to door through the final sector. It looks like Stoltz is going to come out on top. He has the inside line, a little bit of contact through the long right-hander, forces Bertelsen a little bit wide, but has to fall in line, shows the nose into the next corner, but that's not really a place where you can sling it down the inside. So all of a sudden, in the last couple of minutes of this race, Justin, everything's just sparked.
Yeah, it's money time, so to speak. Points are on the line. These drivers are fighting for those said points, especially with an estimated 2 laps to go at the very, very most for a lot of these drivers. There's not a lot of time left to get positions in. These drivers want those positions in now. Don't forget, we have Stefan Overgaard, who's been in the back for much of this race in this mix too.
You see Bollingtoft and Daugard going side by side in the back as well. So a lot of battling towards the back of the field. There's a bit of a hip check. Bollingtoft getting aggressive and forces Daugard wide, coming through the first sector. And of course, another incident to be looked at. So I guess the race admins won't get a break here between race number 1 and race number 2. But that's just a little bit of a shove there from Bollingtoft to work his way through. So the guys at the back of the field here really giving the action here. Towards the front of the field, it looks like Martin Christiansen might just be able to hold on to P number 2 here. He's extended the gap up a little bit to about 6/10 of a second there, 6.5 tenths of a second, but this is basically going to be the start of the final lap for these guys, and I think Jensen's just a little bit too far back.
Yeah, just hasn't gotten to the right position at the right time to make the move, and he struggled on the exit at turn 15. That time, he nearly snapped to try to keep off that curbing. So I think it's just a little bit of the aero push starting to factor in a little bit as well in some of these sections where as soon as he gets close, even with the faster lap times, he just seems to get into a bit of a bubble that prevents him from closing in more than a few tenths.
Yeah, and we have to remind everyone that these are fixed setups, so there's not going to be any difference in terms of how these cars are adjusted here for this race. They're absolutely identical, with the exception of brake bias and a couple of other things that you can change, but everything else, it's absolutely identical with all the cars up and down the field. It's the driver that is the main difference.
Absolutely, and if those drivers say start over aggressive or end up using their equipment early on in terms of the tires, it's hard to get that grip back, because there's the saying, if you end up pushing the tires for even one corner too hard, you only have about a lap or two to get them back essentially before you lose them for the rest of the run.
Looks like this battle's not going to happen for P2, so we can focus our attention to your race leader. It's been a typical Lasseback performance here in race 1, as he leads the race by about 3.3 seconds at the moment, away and clear since the very drop of the green flag. Textbook performance from Lasseback. Just a couple more corners to go, and he has another race win to add to his collection here in this 2020 season of the Danish Sim Racing Esports Championship. Out the final corner, Lasseback wins race number 1 here at Circuit Barcelona, Catalonia. As now we look back towards P2, I think there was a little bit of a dive there from Jensen that was attempted into the final corner, but Christensen still able to come away with P2 in that situation. Everyone else further down the field, I don't think they're going to be close coming across the line, but I want to see what happened here between Jensen and Christensen, because all of a sudden they got very, very close on my timing screens. Let's see what happened coming through that final sector. It was a bit of a lunge, perhaps. They go absolutely nose to tail through the last couple of corners. Jensen actually got a pretty good drive off, but the thing is, that start-finish line comes up on you very, very quickly here. Maybe if it was at the end of the pit straight, Jensen might have been able to do something there at the very end, but he gave it a good shot.
Yeah, I think he needed one more lap, absolutely, to try and do something there, because he got the perfect run through 13 and 14 that I think we were waiting to see if he can do. And if he had that on the second to last lap, it definitely would have potentially been a side-by-side battle, potentially even all the way in the run-up to turn 10 for the last lap.
Yeah, absolutely. Here are your official race results then for race number 1 here at Circuit Barcelona, Catalonia in the Danish Esport Racing Championship. Lasse back by 4.2 seconds wins this race. Martin Christiansen up 1 position, up onto that second step of the podium. Marcus Jensen falls down 1 step onto the third one. As we see Andreas Joachimsen in P4. Mikael Sondergaard finishes P5. Dali Jankovic P6. Magnus Vassersen 7th place. Kasper Henningsen 8th place. Matthias Woodsko in P9. Ollie Oster grabs himself a top 10 finish, Justin.
11th spot, Nick Madsen, Nestorowicz in P number 12 with Kursborg in 13th position. Sulzer in 14th position after that incident. 15th for Martin Bertelsen. Thomas Wick comes home in 16th position, with Overgaard starting and finishing in P17. Bollingtoff having a good run, plus 10 into an 18th place finish. Lowenskopf from 30th to 19th, and Dugard still comes home with the top 20.
And then the rest of the field, Peter Danielsen in P21, Matthias Christiansen in P22, Andreas Much in P23, Johnny Nielsen 24th for him, Jorgensen 25th, Eriksson 26th, Pedersen in 27th, Matthias Jensen P28, Pearson in P29, and Anton Gulish after that early penalty has had a couple more problems, and he does finish in that final 30th spot. But that's race 1 in the books here for the Danish Esports Racing Championship at Barcelona, Catalonia. Join us in just a couple of moments' time where we'll have qualifying 2 and race number 2.
Vinderen af Danish Esport Racing Championship får chancen for at komme ud og køre i en ægte racerbil på Jyllandsringen. Men det er altså ikke hvilken som helst racerbil. Det er nemlig en Ferrari 488 Challenge-bil. Går du med drømmen om at komme ud og prøve en ægte racerbil, så gå ind på esport-racing.eu og tilmeld dig DERC.
To the front bumper, and he hits him again now. Rayon Fowler into the outside wall.
He's going to pass nearly 3 cars down that front straightaway, and he's going to get them all done with. What amazing!
Racely to the inside goes Logan Clapman is going to touch in. Pit press.
saved it.
What a save!
Look to the outside as Tronke goes off. De Jong into second place.
Going for the switchback. Oh, pinpoint driving.
It's howling down to the inside.
Trying this contact though. Slide left of the racetrack. Chris Leonard drives it back down underneath, and he takes that second spot right back. Joker goes to Garrett Lowe. Garrett Lowe should take victory with all that contact.
He's going to try and make the move around the outside the parabolica. That's not going to work, but he's going to try and get the cut back here. Get the run out the parabolica. That's beautifully done there. Schubert. There's a little bit of door banging as well.
from a rather clear and at least warmer race number 1, we head into race number 2, where things have started to become a little bit more cloudy and that track temperature has dropped like a stone. Welcome to qualifying 2 and race 2 here at Circuit Barcelona, Catalonia in the Danish Esport Racing Championship. I am joined by Justin Prince as ever. I am Connery Maddock. And we were discussing this before we loaded into the session here, Justin, just how cold that track temperature is, at least compared to race number 1. It's all the way down to 23 degrees Celsius. That's 73 in Fahrenheit.
Yeah, in terms of Fahrenheit, that is a 30-degree swing in terms of decrease compared to race number 1. Meaning there's going to be a heck of a lot more grip. The practice times were already 2 to 3 seconds quicker for the majority of the field. In turn, it's going to be interesting to see how the drivers adapt here in race number 2.
Yeah, we already have qualifying underway. The drivers just got a little warm-up session to get used to how the track has changed, and it's changed quite a bit in terms of the conditions. So that is a big thing to keep an eye on here. Maybe some drivers going to be a little bit better in the cooler conditions here, so we'll see other cars rise to the top of the field, but we'll just have to wait and see. Drivers on their outlap right now, and we'll get to see how this grid stacks up for race number 2. And let's see if anyone can challenge that 057 car who's doing his characteristic crawl on his outlap.
Yeah, trying to keep the tires nice and conditioned for the qualifying run here. And this is more so towards what was pre-qualification speeds, what we've seen in the warm-up track climatization for this event. Compare that to others, some are already getting ready for their first laps and starting them.
Yeah, Thomas Wick going to be one of the first ones across the line to start his flying lap. So not hanging around like Lasseback is trying to do. He wants to get on with it and get that lap time set. But as you can see, the track relatively dark as we're in sort of the sunset stage right now with the iRacing dynamic time of day and dynamic weather. You can see it's very, very cloudy as well. So those are the big main reasons why the track temperature has dropped so much from race number 1, and it's good that the race administrators do this because it kind of simulates how the track conditions will change over the course of a race weekend. Because, for example, if this, for example, was the big main featured series at this particular racetrack at this time, it might not be race 1, race 2, or whatever, one after the other. They might have support races in between that'll take up a little bit of time. So the change of day is actually pretty accurate as far as some series are concerned.
Yeah, that's actually a good point in terms of that. And yeah, in between those races, you might have some of the younger classes or some of the up-and-coming drivers take to the racetrack. So this is a bit of realism mixed in here for this round, to say the very least. And, oh hey, the lights are on as well for this one as well.
Yep, so we'll get to see those headlights in their full glory as Thomas Wick heads his way out of the final corner. This is going to be his first flying lap then across the line, and it's a 142.4 for Thomas Wick to start things off. He is the first driver across the line to set a qualifying time. So provisional pole position for the moment. But he will most likely drop down the field once the likes of Lasseback and Christiansen and Jensen all set themselves qualifying times. And in fact, it's already happened as Pedersen gets himself provisional pole position. And there is Christiansen, 0.8 of a second faster than the rest of the field. Lasseback is basically in the middle of his lap at this point. And same could be said for Marcus Jensen as well. So keep an eye on those as they head their way towards the end of their particular laps. Lasseback's going to finish his first when it comes to himself versus Jensen. Sondergaard getting himself a good lap time up in towards P number 2. But let's go on board with Lasseback as he comes through the final sector. And, well, pole position for race 1. Can he do the repeat for race number 2? That's the big question, and make it basically, well, almost a clean sweep for this round of the Danish Esports Racing Championship. Would just have to pick up the race win at the end of things. But through that final sector, get that car slowed down. Heavy over the first curb. Oh, heavy over the second curb as well. And he had a big twitch. So that's going to be a bit of lost time there. So this might be Christiansen's and Jensen's best opportunity to try and get pole here. A 141.757 for Lasse back, and it's not good enough to get himself pole position. So Christiansen, 1.5 tenths of a second ahead of your championship leader.
Yeah, those curbs, I think, were the main difference, essentially, with how hard he hit them.
Jensen, there we go. Team Redline provisional pole position by just under 1/10 of a second. So Lasse back, he's going to have to start second row at this rate. So he's going to have to pull up a couple of passes in race number 2 here if he's going to take away the race win. So not an ideal qualifying for Lasse back, but the thing is we hold him to such a high standard because a P3 for anyone else in this sort of qualifying session would be a good result. But Lasse back, we expect him to start on the front row, but not going to be the case here, at least as far as this qualifying 2 is concerned right now.
Yeah, that's it. It's going to be an interesting race now because we've seen how important the clean air was to start. Now it's going to be interesting to see how Lasse back is when having to deal with traffic, because before the traffic fought, he was easily able to break away because of the side-by-side through the first S complex in 1 and 2. Now, there's the chance that Lasse back's going to have to deal with battling. It depends though on how the second lap goes, mind you, because he's still flying around to try and improve that extra 10.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, but Lasse back, his tires will still be, at this point, past their prime. You know, that first flying lap, most of the time, is so much faster than your second flying lap, but regardless, Lasse back will try it on the second here as he heads his way out of the final corner. 141.687 for Lasse back. It is not good enough to improve position. He will have to start third or lower in this situation. We got 2 Jensens inside the top 10 as Matthias Jensen gets himself up into the 4th spot here for that VG Esports Racing Pro car. As you see also Jorgensen getting himself up into P number 6 as well. We've yet to see lap times from both Magnus Vastersen and Andreas Joachimsen. So those are the cars that are going to be getting lap times in at the very dying moments of this qualifying session. Vastersen, he heads his way through that final sector, getting it slowed down. Not taking that first curb aggressively, neither for that second. So he's just avoiding those yellow curbs. And now through the final corner, looking to try and get a good exit. Looks fine to me. Heads his way across the line. 142.102 there for Magnus Vastersen. That is a decent lap time. Good enough to put him up into P7 at the moment. And Andreas Joachimsen, he had a massive lap time as well. He's up into P number 4 in this situation. So we have had a little bit of a swap around in terms of qualifying here, Justin.
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, just a couple drivers are trying to get their second laps, but this swap around has essentially put some of the biggest movers in race number 1 right up at the front, which means, I think one thing, that's going to mean the aggression level might be higher up for the second race. The grip levels are higher up. I'm expecting a lot of battling potentially, especially to get inside the top 5 once the green lights go out.
Yeah, that's the thing, is you see Jensen. He's on his second flying lap, so not expecting this to be an improvement on pole position, on his pole position time, but would still be a big statement of authority if he's able to do it, that's for certain. But just that slight 10th of a second ahead of Christiansen is good enough for now, since he doesn't have a lap time to set at the very end here. Jensen, though, backs out of that one. We still have a minute to go in the session here. But you know, expectations coming into this first race now, the second race now, because we now have Lasse back starting on that second row of the grid. He's going to have to work his way through now, and his race pace has been exemplary throughout this entire season. So I think you might be right, Justin, in that we'll see a lot more battling at the front of the field than we saw in race 1.
Yeah, I have that definite expectation. I think we both do at this point now, especially with back in that third position. Would also be curious to see as well in terms of expectations how the amount of, so to speak, mistakes might come into play, because we've seen it took a little bit for the aggression level to kick up. When you have a lot more grip, that means there's a lot more potential confidence with the amount of speed and the amount you can carry in the corners. So that in turn might mean the potential possibility of drivers trying to make moves we didn't see in race number 1.
Yeah, that's the thing. Time just about to expire for the qualifying session. So we make things official in terms of the grid here for race number 2 at Barcelona, Catalonia for the Danish Esport Racing Championship. Let's see how that grid stacks up here for the second race of the evening. We'll see that Marcus Jensen gets himself to pole position here for Team Redline. Martin Christiansen starts on the front row as well. Lasse back, race winner last race. He's having to start in P3. Andreas Joachimsen in P4. You see Matthias Jensen, Mikael Sondergaard, Magnus Vastersen, and Fredrik Jorgensen bring things down into P8. As you see Kasper Henningsen, Pedersen, Vic. You've got Bollingtoft as well, rounding out the top 12. Kvitsborg, Madsen, Hirsen, and Öster will bring things down to 16th place as Stolzer, Jankovic, Bertelsen, Woodsko make up your top 20 cars on the starting grid. Andreas Morch and Johnny Nielsen will bring things down to 22nd place. We won't have time to go through the rest of them. These guys grid up very, very quickly here. And we're off and away for the Danish Esports Racing Championship Race 2 here at Barcelona, Catalonia. It's absolutely neck and neck coming down into the first corner between both race leaders here. Christiansen and Jensen. Lasse back. Does he dare to shoot the middle in towards turn number 1? He doesn't. He has to have his own battle with Joachimsen here. Side by side for your race leader, though. Door-rubbing coming through that first sector. The blinking of the brake lights from Christiansen might mean that he's going to back out, but the thing is, Jensen, he's run a little bit wide. Careful with the rejoin as he's got himself there just fine, but now has to fight with Lasse back coming through the right-hander, and is Lasse back going to be able to gain the position here? He's so close to being able to do so, but Jensen still challenges. He's still wide awake as he sends it down the inside at the left-hander towards the start of the second sector. Massive, massive battle to start things off here, Justin. But it's Christiansen that gets the best of all of them. Jensen in second place and Lasse back unable to improve position.
Yeah, just couldn't get the preferred line or get clear. Tried to dive it off the corner and get the switch back. But now it's going to, again, take about a lap or so to get a rhythm, set himself up for the prime opportunity. This corner right here in turn 10, it's going to take about a lap, I think, before we see many drivers try that type of move as he still tries to follow on the tire tracks. Christiansen, meanwhile, he's trying to break away.
He's trying, but he hasn't got the gap, the luxury that Lasse back had in race number 1 with an extended side-by-side battle behind him. So instead of the 1.1, 1.2 second lead that Lasse back had at the end of race 1, at the end of the lap 1 of race 1, Christiansen now only has a 3.5 tenths of a second lead at the end of lap 1 in race number 2. You can see everyone stacked up behind in this single train right now as they head their way in towards turn number 1. No early incidents here at the front or in your mid-pack, really. As we see actually Matthias Christiansen, he's heading his way down on towards the pit lane right now and has to take a stop-and-go penalty, it looks like, so might have had an issue on the start.
There was a crash just outside the top 10, I believe. That was in turn number 3, so a few drivers, Bertels and a couple others, are taking their fast repairs. There is one available for this round, so they are taking it right now. That separated the pack a little bit between P10 on back by about a couple seconds or so.
It looks like that's exactly what has happened, but look at this. Still train for P number 1 at the moment. Order Christiansen, Jensen back at the moment. Joachimsen also on the outside looking in as well, so he can potentially be a force to be reckoned with here if these guys decide to have a little bit of a duel. And Jensen actually went very deep there through the left-hand hairpin, just slamming on the anchors and able to make up at least a little bit of time into there as he's just hounding the back of Christiansen at the moment. Look how close he gets to the final sector. There's contact front to rear as Christiansen, he gets punted into the grass by Jensen and has to spin that car back around, rejoin the track safely, but he's down into 13th.
And that was the type of run we've seen on the last lap of race number 1. to carry that amount of speed into that chicane complex. He had already had the mistake by Christensen before, where he nearly lost the bottom of turn 12 before. So I think he's seen an opportunity. Don't think he intended contact, just carried a bit too much speed on the love tap there.
Yeah, just a little too much there for Marcus Jensen. We'll get his view of it. You see, coming through the final sector. Yeah, I think this is unintentional. It's just a slightest of taps to the rear of the Ferrari ahead. Carried a little bit too much speed, and bye-bye that other car, that's for certain, as Christensen down into 13th place. And we may end up seeing a penalty here for Jensen as well. Yeah, he didn't intend to do that, but still, he has done it, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, we'll have to see what comes from that, to say the very least right now. But now the thing is, Lasseback's still providing pressure. So it's not over yet, because for Jensen, he's still got to focus on keeping that 057 in his rear view mirror, because that driver is really strong on the long run we've seen on the hot racetrack.
Yeah, but when things cool off, those tires can just survive a little bit better. Even though they're only 25-minute races here, and these GT3 machines, you know, in endurance conditions can actually double stint the tires, but still, that little bit of degradation sometimes does matter.
Yeah.
There's 0.4 of a second between them as they head their way out of the final corner and across the start-finish line. You see Lasseback just sitting inside that slipstream at the moment, bringing himself ever closer into turn number 1. But as we've already mentioned throughout this broadcast, turn number 1 is not the opportunity that you look for to try and get past. It looks like these 3 cars looking to break away from the rest of them right now. We have Joachimsen right at the back of the shot here in that Ronin Simsport car, trying to keep touch with your leading pair, and doing an okay job at it right now. But if that gap gets any bigger, he won't be getting any draft.
Yeah, about a 10.5, 2 tenths off the race leader last time by, for comparison's sake. So just not getting as well of runs through the apex off, I think, compared to the top 2 at the moment. And that's where he's losing time on the corner ranks. It's just lost himself an hour and a half of car length off of turn 5.
Battle for the race lead still close, of course. Investigation pending as far as Jensen is concerned, but he's got to put that out of his mind right now. He has to fight it like he's not going to get a penalty. You have to think about the best case scenario here.
Oh, we got trouble for
Jensen.
9th. Pedersen is off into the sand, as well as one other driver. There's a few different drivers who are stacked up. It looks like Pedersen lost the back end of his machine to cause a massive stack up of cars in that sector of the racetrack.
We'll get a look at it. Through to it's the end of the middle sector, and it's just a snap oversteer on the entry to the corner. Oh, look, all this cars just scattered, but there's inevitably going to be a couple of cars that get collected in that behind. Well done to avoid it for the initial couple of cars, but the further back in the train that you go, your visibility is very much limited. So as soon as everyone ahead stacks up, swerves ahead of you or stacks up ahead of you, you have no idea what's happening. And this is why it's usually the latter cars that arrive on the scene that actually get collected.
Yeah, that car specifically that was sent off to the tires was Yankovic, so unfortunate for him. But they're just again, you're not expecting a car to be in that type of situation. You're focusing on your marks at that point. He sees cars and tires smoke, just isn't expecting a driver to be right where he's trying to evade.
Yeah, we'll get another little look at it. You can see the danger. They're side by side ahead of him, but it's not there where the danger actually comes. And Yankovic, he can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
He just has to pick a direction and hope and pray at that point. There's not enough time to react, and he ends up currently 30th, dead last, and he's taking the tow back to pit lane, in fact. So he probably won't end up finishing this race. He could probably take the tow and get the fast repair and maybe do a couple of laps right at the very end, but that's such an unfortunate way to go out.
Yeah, very unfortunate to say the very least. Right now to the bottom of the pole he goes in terms of the running order, but going to be some interesting battles to say the very least. 5th is starting to heat up a little bit because Vasson is starting to pick up the speed the past 2 laps.
Yeah, he is, and you can see 0.7 of a second, 1.5 tenths of a second, just pushing a little bit wide, coming through that little right-hander before the chicane. You're going to lose a little bit of time. As careful over that yellow curb as well for that driver ahead, which is Matthias Jensen. You can see it on your screen. So both drivers making slight errors there through the final sector. It's very tricky to get that right, so you can perhaps forgive them for making a couple of errors into that sector. But with about 16 minutes left remaining, you still have that question for P number 1. You still have a question of who's going to finish inside the top 5 as well, because there's a good amount of cars currently in this particular battle, and in fact for P4 as well, as that's at the head of the train right now. Sondergaard going to be leading this particular group around the circuit. So it's been a pretty interesting start to race number 2. Certainly more action than we had in race number 1, which is what we like to see. And we also have a potential battle for the race lead, especially if that investigation comes clear for Marcus Jensen.
At this point, Jensen's driving as fast as he can up at the front of the field, but there's also, mind you, too, the thought process again of making sure he stays that way. With a driver like back, you cannot afford a mistake. Last time by, he picked up a couple tenths with one of the fastest laps of the entire race. A 1:41.892. The fastest was by him as well with an 8:02. So he is very quick with that clean air. It's just, again, the matter of trying to run away from back.
Yeah, but that's not an easy feat, that's for certain. So let's say he's going to be trying his best to keep close here. He doesn't have to rush this move, though. He's still got 15 minutes left in the race, so it's not a big concern for Lasse back as far as the race league goes right now. But Jensen looking to pick up another race win here. He was able to race 1 at Imola. Will it be the case here, race number 2 at Barcelona, Catalonia? That's the question, and it will be unanswered for now. It will be in 15 minutes' time, though. Having a look at the rest of the field, though, we see Kasper Stoltz currently in a pretty close altercation with Martin Christiansen here, trying to chase him down. In fact, he's lost a lot of time over the last 3 laps, so I think that pass has already happened, as Christiansen getting turned around in the early goings by Jensen, having to get a bit of a recovery drive going.
Yeah, he dropped all the way back to 13th position, if you remember, when he rejoined back on the circuit. So he's already been flying, and mind you, the pace he's running at the moment, it's the same as Marcus Jensen. So he is as quick as the race leader at the moment. It's just he doesn't have the track position anymore because of that incident before. He needs to find a way somehow to close up 9.8 seconds.
Yeah, without outside influence in a race as short as this, that is a very low percentage chance of that happening. Pushes very wide for the right-hand kink of 9, though. So you can see he's pushing, and he's going to try and gain as many points as possible. There's Kasper Henningsen about 2.5 seconds down the road, and he's been gaining time hand over fist over him. So that one might be able to be picked up. And that's the sort of tail end of a train as well. So best case scenario here for Christiansen would be getting a top 5 finish, which not be bad considering what happened in the opening lap.
Indeed, I think it's realistic at this point with the way he's been driving, looking very smooth and consistent, using the very fine limits of the track, not exploiting them or going over top in terms of incidents. He's been able to keep the car consistent, and now it's just a matter of keeping things going. Last time by a 1:42 flat for him.
Yeah, so continuing on with those decent lap times, just chipping off tenths of a second as far as P8 is concerned. Looking a bit further forward, though, you see Sondergaard and Jensen, just 2.5 tenths of a second between those two. They've been trading lap times over the last 3 laps, though, so not a lot to separate them. Meanwhile, Jorgensen down the inside of Vasterson, I believe, in the very background. And it looks like Jorgensen has been able to make his way through. He gets up into P6. We'll get to see exactly how this happened. It was a bit of a surprising move. Certainly caught me off guard and, well, caught Vasterson off guard as well.
Yeah, I think at that point, Vasterson might have thought, oh, hey, he's going to try and maybe go for a later arc or something. He wasn't expecting the dive, but they're fighting side by side up in front.
Here we go. Sondergaard versus Jensen, and Sondergaard has been able to, get P number 4 here, but they're still very, very close. coming through to the start of the final sector. So these guys still very much not done. Look at Jorgensen. He's just trying to find a line every which way through the chicane section. Slightly different lines through the apexes there. And now it's going to be the big old drag race down the pit straight. As you see Jensen's sitting inside that slipstream at the moment, but it's going to be a daring move down into turn 1 if he's able to go for it even at all here. Is he going to go for it? Shows the nose. Trying to force an error from that car ahead of him, and actually drags the brakes in a little bit further, so he's able to gain a big chunk of time by doing that. So Sondergaard just a little bit more tentative there into turn number 1, but as a result of those guys going side by side, now Jorgensen's having a look to try and get himself a top 5 finish.
Curious to see how Jorgensen takes this opportunity. At this point, I think I would be patient, see what happens between these cars. Because if you try and risk it now, that might get a bit dicey. Right now, though, Sondergaard knows that Jensen is faster at the moment, is really playing defensively, and every major opportunity to pass.
Yeah, he's making that Ferrari GT3 car as wide as possible here in the sort of final 10 minutes of this race. VG Esports Racing, though, Matthias Jensen, he's been aggressive on a couple of occasions, looking to work his way by, but hasn't been successful just yet. Drags it in deep into the hairpin. A little bit of a wider line being taken there by Jensen. Sondergaard going a little bit more shallow into the corner to try and get that potential inside move covered off here. So an intriguing battle here inside the top 5 of this race. You can see Sondergaard, at the end, slightly different lines coming through the final sector as well. But Sondergaard has the move covered off, and that's a big wide moment for Jensen there as he clatters over the curb and loses quite a bit of speed coming off the corner. And now you can see Jorgensen much closer and very much looking threatening here. Might not go, well, he will go for it into turn number 1. That's a big lunge there, or at least attempted lunge. Look how much big corner speed he carries, though, because Jensen was compromised just a little bit. And now through the first sector, the winding S's section, Jensen rides the back, but now here comes Vasterson through the long right-hander. That black car heads its way down the inside, has to slam on the brakes into the next right, but unable to complete the pass there. And that's one of the things here about competing in these sorts of trains, where if you mess up a move trying to get by the driver ahead of you, you have a driver behind you that looks to capitalize on it.
Absolutely, and that's where you need to play it smart and plan out your moves right now. Jorgensen tried to go for the move and take advantage, couldn't do so. Now Vasterson is now into a battle because of all the checking up. Henningsen now has a chance to move himself up to 7th position.
Yeah, definitely a big old chance for Henningsen, closing up on the brakes. And again, a little bit of a shallower line taken by Vasterson in that situation to try and cover off that dive that drivers have been pretty happy to take into that particular corner. As a result, though, 0.6 of a second has been the gap now between Jorgensen and Vasterson, so he's gone from offense to defense as well here. So he has to look ahead and behind him at the moment. Through the final corner, though, it looks like Henningsen got the slightly better run coming through there. So he might just have a little bit of a look into the first sector here. We've seen an attempted dive from Jorgensen already, but it looks like Henningsen not going to go for a similar move in this situation. They get close into the braking zone, though. Another bit of lost time for all 3 of them now in this battle, because look at who it is. It's Christiansen, battling for the race lead at the start of the race, and now with all this battling in the mid-pack, it might be easy pickings.
Yeah, gained 0.7 of a second last time by, and you can see the difference in how deep he's going in the brakes compared to some of the cars in front. He's feeling very confident right now in terms of being able to get these spots. There's a chance we might see a dive in the upcoming laps here, especially with that bubble up in front.
Yeah, a bit of a moment for Henningsen. Christiansen going to be the driver looking to make the moves, I think, in this particular pack, because he has so much pace over all of them. But as the great Murray Walker once said, catching is one thing, passing is very much another. But here comes the big opportunity into the left-hander. He's going to send it down the inside. Christiansen up into P8. Wasn't fought that hard by Henningsen. And I think Henningsen's plan here might just to be following the tire tracks of Christiansen as he tries to get through on all these other cars.
Yeah, I think that has to be the plan at this point for Henningsen. Follow on the tire tracks, try take advantage of the passes he makes, and just make sure you keep up at the very least. Don't lose too much time by being overly aggressive. That time had too much of a late break into 14. It lost him some time for the rest of the lap.
Yeah, you can see how that gap is extended already between the two of them, but you can see more cars for Christiansen to gobble up further down the road. He only has about 6 minutes to do this, though, so whether he'll be able to get all of them or not is still a big question that needs answering. But next on the list is the car of Magnus Vastersen, who's no slouch himself, so he might actually pull up more of a fight here than Henningsen was able to pull up.
Yeah, I don't see him giving it up too easily at this point, but look what's going on up in front of them. Jensen still providing pressure on Sodergaard. Has been riding nearly the entire back bumper, it seems, every single hard braking zone. He's still trying to get away on by.
Again, a deep amount of brakes into the left and keeping himself close, and he needs to do the same through this right-hand kink, and he'll have the big move, the big opportunity into the hairpin to be able to work his way into the inside. But the thing is, Sondergaard has that covered off, so it's going to be the big wide arc taken by Jensen. He's going to try and find the speed off the corner, but Jorgensen behind just sticking his nose in where perhaps it doesn't belong, and almost contact between those two cars. But Jensen unable to find the drive off the corner required to try and at least challenge Sondergaard here in this situation. And now, again, alternate lines being taken into the braking zone of the chicane. So Sondergaard is very much feeling threatened here, and that would be justified because look at how close Jensen is coming off the corner and getting this huge amount of slipstream down the pit straight now. So this might end up being the move for Jensen. It's going to have to be around the outside here into turn one. If he's able to hold it, he has the inside for the next apex. But those advantage switches once again. It's side by side between the two of them. Then Jensen works his way through on Sondergaard. Very well worked past there, but look at the stack up behind that it's caused. Sondergaard now getting harassed by Jorgensen. But Jorgensen backed out of that one a little bit. Vastersen's been able to catch up to this pack as a result, but he's not heading his way down the inside just yet. And to round it out, there's Martin Christiansen as well, looking to try and get past all of them side by side once again between Sondergaard and Jensen. Coming through the left, and I think Jensen's just about able to hold on to that position, but Sondergaard will still try to fight him. At least he shows the nose into the S's section, but the more these guys fight, that's a huge amount of curb though from Jensen, and now Sondergaard can whip his way down the inside, and Jorgensen looking to join the party, but Sondergaard, he slowed up a little bit too much to the right-hand kink, so Jensen can maybe have a look to try and get back by, but here comes Jorgensen, deep brakes around the outside, he might get both of them done. That is an absolutely wonderful, at least attempt at a move there, but he's just going to get the one. A little bit too great. He might even get the one because Jensen's still trying to challenge him around the outside. Jorgensen, he might get them both now. 3 wide into the final sector. There's so much contact, and that's going to be one driver that's been spat wide. Jensen still tries to battle with Vastersen. There's another car pushed wide there, as I believe that was Martin Christiansen having a little bit of a moment. Look at this, 3 wide down the pit straight now between all of these cars, and so you can see Kasper Stolzer, he was absolutely nowhere at the start of this battle, and now he looks to try and gain a couple of positions. He's ahead of Jensen into the braking zone of the first corner, and he might just be able to pick up the position. Yes, he does. What a confusing sequence.
And just came in from race control. The leader has been black flag, Connery. Marcus Jensen, 1 second stop and go.
Oh, there we go. So Lasse back. He doesn't need to fight for it. Marcus Jensen has to come down in and serve that stop and go penalty. It won't be a race win for the second event in a row for Team Redline, but I think that was always coming. Yes, it was accidental, but you still have to penalize the unnecessary risk for Marcus Jensen. Front to rear contact with Christiansen has netted him a penalty right in the dying moments of this race. They took a while to deliberate that, but I'd rather them take a while and get it right than rush a decision and get it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And at this point, it took a little while, yes, because there was huge implications. This is coming towards the estimated white flag, so this is a huge situation now. Lasse back with cycle to the front, but the battle's not done yet, mind you, for the rest of the positions.
No, they're not done. Jensen, he's in. That's the penalty being served. How far down the field does he drop? That's the question. We'll know in a couple of moments' time. But that is unfortunate there for the Team Redline driver. It's just one of the realities of racing sometimes. As you see now, Christiansen, well, might be a podium finish at the end of this, because now Marcus Jensen cycling all the way back has made this now a battle for P3 out there. So Christiansen, what a recovery drive.
What a heck of a recovery drive, absolutely. And with all of that madness, I think he got through the cleanest out of all of them, but there's still an estimated half a lap to get around this racetrack. I think there's a chance he can get him. He's got to play this right. Time it up to get to the inside of turn 10 and hope to get it to stick. If it doesn't, you're in trouble. He's trying it now.
Here we go, down the inside at the left. There's a bit of an error from Jorgensen, has netted Christiansen this opportunity to get himself onto the final step of the podium, and it's happened. Fantastic move there from Christiansen. Lasse back, though, through the final sector. He has been exemplary so far this season, and this race just exemplifies it. Race 1, win by a comfortable margin. Race 2, a little bit more concerning with that qualifying, but that penalty for Jensen has made it in the end pretty easy for your championship leader. Lasse back out the final corner. He scores maximum points here at Barcelona, Catalonia in the Danish Esport Racing Championship. He wins race number 2. We cycle things back, though, because there's that train for the final step of the podium. It's Martin Christiansen that comes across the line in P3. What a brilliant drive from Christiansen after those early issues getting spun around. He now finishes on the podium, and I don't think he would have expected that at the end of the first lap.
I don't think he would have either after what happened there. That is a plus 10 after that situation. Stellar driving from Christiansen to get back up onto the podium in the end after this one.
Yeah, brilliant performance indeed, and it was an absolute joy to watch as well. But with that, we'll grab your official race results from race number 2 at Circuit Barcelona, Catalonia. Here they are, Lasse back once again on the top of the podium, this time by 3.2 seconds. Andreas Joachimsen, second place for him, so a fantastic race from Joachimsen. It was pretty quiet through most of it, you know, in a little bit of no man's land as far as his positioning is concerned, but a decent drive to come home with the second place. Christiansen, though, massive effort to haul himself back up to a top 3 after that lap 1 contact. Fredrik Jorgensen, he had his fair share of battles here today as well. He finishes in P4. Magnus Vassersen ends up with a top 5 finish. Kasper Stolzer picking up a couple of positions at the end there to bring himself home in P6. Kasper Henningsen, P7. Matthias Jensen, P8. Jacob Fitzborg in P9. Marcus Jensen, though, after that penalty, he still comes away with a top 10, but could have been so much more, Justin.
Absolutely. What could have been losing 19 seconds in the process. In 11th spot as they continue to cycle through. Nick Madsen moving up along with Sodergaard at the moment. Oyster in 12th position. Esterwich in 13th. Bowling top 14th. Nielsen in 15th position. In the 16th spot, it is Dugard with Woodsko in 17th position. Eriksson, Danielson, and Levenskov round out the top 20.
Thomas Wick 21st as Christiansen P22. That's Matthias Christiansen as Thomas Jessen in P23. Stefan Overgaard 25th for him as Martin Bilson comes home 26th. We've got Gulish, Morsch, we've got Jankovic and Pedersen bringing things down to P29, and that will be your final runners here in race number 2. Don't go away because we have the post-race show just coming up in a couple of moments' time after this short break. Don't go away.
Vinderen af Danish Esport Racing Championship får chancen for at komme ud og køre i en ægte racerbil på Jyllandsringen. Men det er altså ikke hvilken som helst racerbil. Det er nemlig en Ferrari 488 Challenge-bil. Går du med drømmen om at komme ud og prøve en ægte racerbil, så gå ind på esport-racing.eu og tilmeld dig DERC.
It was maximum points once again for your championship leader as he extends his advantage in those standings. Lasse back, the big performer here today, and we'll grab a couple of words with him in just a few moments' time. But another fantastic race here in the Danish Esports Racing Championship. I'm Conor Maddock. I had been joined by Justin Prince, but it's just me to take you through the post-race show here today. We do have a couple of driver interviews for you. Of course, the first of which will be your double race winner here today. We bring him into the commentary booth. Lasse, you've done it again. You've gotten 2 race wins inside a single event. And, well, for race 1, it looked pretty confident. It looked pretty okay for you. But for race 2, a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, it was a little bit more complicated because the weather, the track was like 20 degrees colder. So there's a really much grip, like a lot of grip. So it was kind of hard for me to get adjusted to that. I also didn't practice much these last 4 days up to the race in the cold weather. It was only hot weather because it has always been hot, the track. But this time, in second race, it was cold. So I just struggled a bit to put down the qualifying lap, and yeah, I got P3, but I was lucky that both of them in front kind of got disappeared, and I ended up P1.
Would you say the cold weather is your weakness? Is this the case for every single track, or was it just this track in particular that gave you problems?
I don't think it's my weakness. I just don't practice it at all to this series. But yeah, I definitely struggle a bit in the cold. I think you can say that.
When you saw that contact at the start of race 2 between those two guys right ahead of you, what was your thought process after that? Because you saw from your view it was front to rear contact as far as Jensen and Christensen were concerned. So you must have thought that Jensen would potentially get a penalty. So from that point forwards, were you just taking it easy, knowing that Jensen might have to come down towards pit lane at some point?
Yeah, I was definitely thinking that in the start. I just tried to stay behind him and see if he got a penalty. But when we got further into the race, I was getting a little bit nervous because he didn't get a penalty. Yeah, at the end of the race he got one. But I still tried to stay close to him to attack him if he didn't get a penalty in the race.
I guess the stewards are keeping it tense by leaving you hanging when it comes to that. But surely you must be looking confident to take this entire championship at the end now, because it's another maximum points haul for you. You extend your advantage a huge amount in the championship once again, especially since Mikael Gard wasn't in this particular race. So you got to be thinking now, you have to have like at least one hand on that trophy.
Yeah, I'm feeling really confident now. I'm also not nervous anymore to go into the rounds. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that it's almost in the books. This championship, almost.
Yeah, it's never done until it's done. You know, there's so many metaphors you can pull out, and it's never over until the fat lady sings is one of my favorite ones. And because you never know what can happen in the final couple of rounds. But I was going to say, usually in this sort of situation, we start to talk about, the final couple of tracks on the schedule or whatever, what do you think? But the thing is, you don't know, and I don't know either, and no one knows. So are you hoping, at least considering the rest of the tracks in the sort of pool to choose from, which tracks would you like to see sort of finish off your season?
I think the tracks that are left in the pool is Bathurst and Circuit of the Americas, and one other track I can't really remember. But Kota, I definitely don't want to race on that because I haven't raced that a lot.
Yeah, Circuit of the Americas is still definitely an option, at least for the other drivers to try and get past you in this situation. But
definitely.
But at the end of this race here, is there anyone behind the scenes that gets it done for you and brings you these race wins?
Yeah, I would like to thank my family and my team as competition for the support, and it's been amazing so far.
Well, thank you very much, and very well done on getting both race wins here today.
Thank you.
That was Lasse Bach, P1, both races here this evening. And we do have another driver waiting to get themselves in. That's going to be Andreas Joachimsen, who had a very, very good run in the second race here this evening. Comes home on that second step of the podium. Andreas, decent result in that last race.
Yeah, thanks. It was quite a decent result today. I think I finished fourth and second in the two races, so pace was around where it should be, I would say. Just miss out the last 10th or 2 to the top guy today, or to Lasse and I think Marcus. So everything was good. So
everything was pretty good, and in these sorts of races, especially in that second race where at points towards the end, you were sort of in your own little bit of space. You had a decent gap to Lasse back ahead, and you were pretty comfortably ahead of Martin Christiansen. And with Jensen coming down in to serve that penalty at the very end, you were promoted into that second place. So at the end, was your mindset just bring it home for all intents and purposes?
As you're saying, I had a good gap behind me in the end, so I was just comfortably getting it home, so to not making any mistakes or doing something stupid. But I was actually trying until I think 7-8 minutes ago, or when there's 7-8 minutes left of the race, I actually tried to close the gap to the front guys, because I actually didn't expect that Martin or Marcus was going to have this penalty. because in so many laps nothing happened. So I actually thought he was going to go to the end. But when I saw he went to the pit and there was only one lap to go, I was just taking it easy, and I think in the last couple of minutes, 5-6 minutes left, I did a few mistakes. So yeah, it is what it is. But I tried everything I could to close the gap.
Yeah, but try as you might, Lasseback is incredibly quick, and he's been able to pick up both race wins here today. But for you, what are your goals now coming towards the end of the season in terms of your place in the championship? Because it's sort of down around about where you are. There's a couple of drivers that are very, very close in terms of points, and today you'll be getting a decent amount of points for finishing in second place. So sort of whereabout do you think you're going to end up finishing in the standings?
Oh yeah, that's a difficult question. I hopefully will get myself into top 3. That's what I'm aiming for, of course. But I think the gap from me to top 3 is quite big, I would say. I'm actually not too much into the points yet. I'm just taking it race by race. Also because I had not so good weekend last time. 2 races in Imola was not so good. So I definitely lost a lot of points there. So from there on, I just try to tell myself that we are going to take it one race of each other, and then try to grab a win or two. Or of course try to win every race that is back. But yeah, I mean that's the aim for now. So.
Of course, we have the points up on the screen for the viewers right now. We currently sit in P number 4, not too far behind Martin Christiansen. And as a result of Mikael not participating in this race, you'll get a huge amount of points over him, if not overtake him. So you might end up being up into P3 in the standings right at the end of things here, depending on how those points work out. So a top 3 finish at the end, that would be ultimately beneficial for you, yeah?
Yeah, I would say yes. I mean, that would be what I think that if I could get a top 3, that would be maximizing things. Cause I think I have been missing out the last couple of tens to be the race winner. I would say compared to Lasse back and also Marcus Jensen sometimes. So yeah, until now I think it should be maximizing the things to get into top 3, and I would be pretty satisfied with that.
Okay, and before we wrap things up here, is there anyone you want to give a shout out to before we end the broadcast?
Yeah, thanks. Of course. Of course, I wanna give a shout out to Real and Digital Motorsport, to all of our sponsors on the team, and to the other drivers in the team as well. We're trying to help each other out as much as we can, and yeah, they are cheering for me during this Danish series as well. So of course I wanna say thanks to all of them.
Well, there we go. Andreas Joachimsen comes home in second place in race number 2. A decent amount of points gained, but that's going to be all that we have time for here in the Danish Esports Racing Championship. I've been Conry Maddock, and we also had Justin Prince on the commentary as well. It's around about a month's time before we get another round of the Danish Esports Racing Championship. We don't know where we're going to go. The drivers do not know what track awaits them. But either way, with the racing being the way it is so far this season, it's going to be absolutely brilliant. Join us for that, for when it happens.